One of my favorite scripture passages comes at the end of the Gospel of John. Peter and some of the other disciples are sitting around their house and the door's locked because they're afraid that the people that have taken and crucified Jesus are going to come after and crucify them. And in the middle of the night, one of the men speaks up and he says, "Hey, do you guys want to go catch some fish?" So they go and they take their boat out into the sea, and after all night of just tossing the nets out and pulling them back in and tossing them out and pulling them back, they finally are about to give up. And then they look out on the shoreline and they see this figure. And the figure says in a loud voice, "Hey, have y'all caught any fish yet?" They shrug their shoulders, shake their heads. "Well, try throwing your net on the other side of the boat," the voice says. They do it and they pull back in this massive amount of fish. Immediately, Peter realizes that this is Jesus, and so he jumps out of the boat. He can't wait for the boat to go to shore, and so he just starts running as fast as he can in the water. And he goes up to the shore and he meets Jesus there. I don't think it's any coincidence that the thing that Jesus tells the disciples when he sees them on the shoreline is to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. I don't know about you, but I feel like for me, there's been this overwhelming sense that maybe we'll wake up tomorrow and that all of this, the events of the last few weeks, would have just been a bad dream and we'll go back to normal. But I can't help but think that maybe normal wasn't working. We've seen images all across this world, whether it's seeing pictures of China from satellite locations where the pollution has begun to die down because the factories aren't being used anymore, whether it's the peaks of mountains that have never been so clear before because the earth for once is stopping and breathing. And perhaps the thing that God is telling us at this moment in history is that we need to take a moment, to take a breath, to recognize that the inevitable rat race of pushing and pushing and pushing harder and harder every day to try and produce as much as we can, to get as much as we can, isn't working. And maybe it's time for us to throw our nets on the other side of the boat. Maybe it's time for you to reconcile broken relationships. Maybe it's time for you to finally acknowledge that the job that you've been working so hard at might not be the job that God is calling you to do. Maybe it's time for you to recognize that the addictions that you felt are feeding this pain that lives inside of you isn't working anymore. I believe that is the beauty of the message of Easter Sunday. The beauty of the resurrection for each of us is that time and time again that we go back to places where we see death and destruction, and we go expecting to see something different, and all the while God is there speaking to us, saying, don't go to the places that bring death. Don't go back to your former life. Don't go back to the things that were eating away at your soul. But cast your net on the other side of the boat. Find the new reality, the newness of life that God is calling you and I to live in this day and every day to come. To that God, to the God who calls us out into new waters, to the God who declares to us that we are made for more. To that God be all honor, glory, dominion, and power now and forevermore. Amen.
Call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep.
Well, I'd like to thank you for choosing to worship with us again this day. My prayer for you is that this has been a spiritually meaningful and uplifting experience, and that as you go out from this place to wherever it is you may be gathered, that you would hold on to this incredible truth, that wherever you go and whatever you do, that God, our Creator, Christ, our Redeemer, and the Spirit, our Sustainer, goes with us all.